You name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, the Duke of Sussex's deranged mission to destroy the British press reaches the High Court. But surprise, surprise, the uber-privileged Prince of Hypocrisy didn't even bother to turn up. So, after infuriating the Mirror Group's barrister and the High Court judge by arrogantly wasting their time, can Harry recover from such a disastrous start to his courtroom showdown? I'll explain why the Duke's reputation is also on trial this week in my digest next, before my superstar panel weigh in. And tonight, I'm joined by Carol Malone, Sam Dowler and Belinda DeLucy. Then is Prince Harry's humiliating dressing down at the hands of a High Court judge a sign that he'll regret becoming the first royal in 130 years to give evidence under oath tomorrow? My Royal Masterminds lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier weigh in. And Harry's biographer Angela Levin will also join me live in the studio to offer her unflinching expert analysis on today's courtroom bombshells that date back 30 years and involve, wait for it, Princess Diana, Michael Barrymore and our very own Paul Burrell. Elsewhere tonight, Holly Willoughby returned to the This Morning sofa today and started the fight back with an emotional statement slamming her former BFF Philip Schofield.
Me and all of us at This Morning gave our love and support to someone who was not telling the truth, who acted in a way that they themselves felt that they had to resign from ITV and step down from a career that they loved.
So, will that be enough to save This Morning from the axe? TV firebrand Kim Woodburn, I know you've been waiting for her verdict. Social commentator Joanna Jaju and journalist David Atherton do battle in the clash. Plus, fans of the hit US drama The Morning Show noticed life imitating art when Holly broke her silence this morning.
All we can do now is be the family that we are.
Exactly, exactly.
You are part of this family, and we will get through this together.
Fleet Street icon Calvin McKenzie delivers his verdict on Holly's comeback and what it means for embattled ITV later in Uncancelled. And despite the show's former head of news slamming its toxic and sexist culture, its elusive editor Martin Frizzell could only muster this bizarre response.
Is there a toxic work environment at This Morning?
I'll tell you what's toxic, I've always found toxic, is aubergine. Do you like aubergine? Do you?
So if that's how seriously the woke ITV bosses are taking this, can the disgraced daytime show really survive the storm? That's our big debate later in the show. Also coming up tonight, Rishi Sunak was in a self-congratulatory mood today as he gave an update on his battle plan to stop the boats.
Crossings are now down 20% compared to last year. That's right, crossings are down 20%.
But will celebrating shallow victories like that really be enough to stop the invasion of our southern border? Nigel Farage, he's going to mark Sunak's report card on the migrant crisis imminently. And is the PM blocking the release of WhatsApp messages to the COVID inquiry because they'll reveal his plot to topple Boris Johnson? Well, allies of Boris think so, including Tory peer Lord Cruddas, who says the coup is starting to unravel. We'll get stuck into that later in the media buzz. Tomorrow's newspaper front page is hot off the press, very shortly too. A brand new Greatest Britain and Union jackass crowned before the night is out as well. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Let's go. You're watching GB News, Britain's news channel, a programming note, special edition of the show tomorrow night. Harry's evidence, the verdict. But we will cover the extraordinary developments in the High Court in just a couple of minutes after Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. Good evening. The top stories on GB News tonight. The Prime Minister says his plan to tackle the arrival of illegal migrants to the UK in small boats and tackle the asylum backlog is starting to work. But he admits there's still a long way to go. During a speech he gave today in Kent, the Prime Minister said small boat crossings were down 20%. Rishi Sunak also announced a further 2 barges to accommodate a further 1,000 migrants, but wouldn't comment on where they're to be located. The Prime Minister says the government's using every tool at its disposal to tackle illegal migration. But the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has welcomed the news, saying the government still needs to secure more return agreements with other countries.
I think everybody wants to make sure that we stop the boats. We don't want people making that dangerous journey. All we've really had from the government, though, is the announcement of a policy that doesn't work, then the re-announcement of the same policy, essentially. And it often feels, I think, like Groundhog Day. And meanwhile, that's costing a fortune for the taxpayer. And there's this growing sense of frustration. I mean, I'm at Hinkley Point C here today. Fantastic project. It's behind schedule, and there's a frustration here.
Now, thousands of British Airways and Boots employees are among those who've had their personal data breached following a cyber attack. BA says its staff was amongst those hit by the attack on Zelis. That's a payroll provider used by hundreds of companies in Britain. Pharmacy group Boots also said the attack had included some of its employees and their personal details. It includes names, addresses and banking details. Now, Holly Willoughby has returned to the daytime TV show this morning for the first time today, following her Turning our attentions now to the United States, where the former US Vice President Mike Pence says he's going to be running for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination. Pence will run against former US President and front-runner Donald Trump. He's expected to formally launch his campaign with a video and a speech on Wednesday. Full details on that right here, GB News. And lastly, Princess Eugenie has announced the birth of her second child. It's a boy. They've called him Ernest George Ronnie Brooks Bank. She posted a photograph of the new little baby on her Instagram accounts earlier on today, saying Ernest was born on the 30th of May. And she added that big brother August is already loving it being a big brother. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's time to kick off our coverage of Harry's evidence, the courtroom bombshells. He really really does think he lives in his own world with his own rules, doesn't he? Well, I fear the cold, hard facts might be about to catch up with Harry, the Prince of Hypocrisy. Not today, though, because he didn't even bother to show up to the first day of his court case against Mirror Group newspapers, infuriating their QC and surprising the judge. Missing Prince Harry, last seen quaffing champagne in the first-class lounge at LAX airport after celebrating his princess daughter Lilibet's second birthday party. The poor boy was far too jet-lagged to bother to show up to the High Court today. What a disgrace. Harry's permatan barrister David Sherborne said it's because his client, who left the royal family to apparently live a normal and peaceful life, he isn't like you or me, you see. He's special. Sherborne told the court the Duke of Sussex is attending tomorrow to give evidence. He flew yesterday evening from Los Angeles. He was attending his daughter's birthday yesterday and he arrives. But the irritated judge, Mr Justice Fancourt, interrupted at that point to say, I'm a little surprised that the first witness is not going to be available today. Mr Sherborne went on, he is in a different category to the other three claimants because of his travel arrangements and security arrangements. But Andrew Green, the KC for the Mirror, who will cross-examine Harry tomorrow, was rightly furious, raging, it is absolutely extraordinary that we were only told yesterday that he was not available for day one of his trial. We are deeply troubled by that. We have done everything we can to not waste court time. Now we are going to have some time wasted this afternoon. The disastrous start to Harry's week in court sums up, I think, the huge risks of him becoming the first royal in 130 years to give evidence under oath. For the past 3 years, Harry has been living in a Meghan Markle-driven fantasy world. Facts don't matter, but feelings do. There is only his truth, which often doesn't match with reality. And there's been no cross-examination from his mates in the media, Oprah Winfrey, Tom Bradby and Anderson Cooper. Well, tomorrow that changes, with KC Green determined to undermine Harry's hacking claims. Today he showed just how punchy he will be, declaring Harry's case as fantastical, and then adding there's no evidence to support a finding that any mobile phone owned or used by the Duke of Sussex was hacked. Zilch, zero, nil, de nada, niente, nothing. But I believe Harry has already lost in the court of public opinion, opining constantly about media intrusion while invading the privacy of his own family consistently for financial gain.
There were countless stories in books and papers about Willie and me not being circumcised. Mummy had forbidden it, they all said. And while it's absolutely true that the chance of getting penile frostbite is much greater if you're not circumcised, all the stories were false.
I was defending myself and we moved from one room into the kitchen and his frustrations were growing and growing and growing, and he snapped and he pushed me to the floor.
None of us really wanted to have to talk about it at my grandfather's funeral, but we did. And, you know, I've had to make peace with the fact that probably never going to get genuine accountability or a genuine apology.
It's not just the Mirror on trial this week. It's Prince Harry's reputation too. But to respond now, my superstar panel. Top Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, political commentator Sam Dowler, and the former Brexit Party MEP Belinda de Lucy. Carol Malone, this was extraordinary that Harry didn't even bother to show up today. He's meant to be a private citizen during this case.
It's on that a bloke who says his life's work is to change the landscape of the British media couldn't even be bothered to turn up for court today, where he would have had a chance maybe to do that. I think it shows his arrogance, his total disregard for the British legal system, the fact that he thinks the legal system has to wait for him. But I'm looking forward, I'm going to get the popcorn in tomorrow, I'm going to watch this because it's the first time a royal has appeared in a court case since 1891, and I suspect it'll be the last, because I think he's going to make a Charlie of himself. You've got to remember that every interview he's ever done has been with sycophants for money. He's never been robustly challenged. He's never had anyone question what he says. Tomorrow, he's going to be aggressively cross-examined over 33 stories that he claimed his phone was hacked over. And you know, Andrew Green, the Mirror's QC, is not going to spare the horses on this. And I think he's going to make an absolute fool of Harry. You've seen Harry, as I have, in various interviews where someone dares to challenge what he says. They question it, even albeit gently. And you see his face, he goes nuts. I think he'll lose it when he's giving evidence. I think he will lose his composure.
Lose his cool, lose his rag.
I was going to say something else there.
He's got a temper on him.
It's very hard. Yes, he's got a huge temper on him, and I think he will lose it because I don't think he's going to get away with the trick here. And I don't get why a man who was so determined to do this thinks his daughter's birthday party was more important. He must have known what the court day was. He could have had the birthday party the day before, and yet he chooses to stick two fingers up with the British justice system by not even turning up.
But he was here. He was here. He'd arrived last night. It was a first-class flight. Just get your ass out of bed and get to the courtroom.
But as Andrew Green QC said, he has 33 stories that he needs to question him aggressively on. And Andrew Green is saying that one day isn't going to be enough time to do that. So Harry is not even going to have all his stuff heard. So, you know, maybe it was a calculated thing, but I think he's going to be torn limb from limb.
Well, look, Carol, I will just quickly say, because you mentioned getting the popcorn out, obviously, sadly, in this country, no cameras in court.
No, that is true.
But tomorrow night, from 9 p.m, on our special edition of the show, we are actually recreating the evidence. So you're going to want to be with us then.
I will.
Belinda de Lucy, this is a huge risk for Harry, isn't it?
I think it's going to completely backfire. I expect a bit of a car crash as well. I think this sort of too much therapy, Californian psycho bubble has completely infantilized Harry. It will be like watching a child in court. Or through the journalists, because I know we can't actually watch it. But it is, and I'm slightly worried for him because, as Carol and you have both pointed out, he is, I think, incapable of being scrutinised rigorously as an adult. He's always had his own way. He's now anti-him media. And what really sticks in my throat, Dan, is that Harry and Meghan have caused so much damage to other people, including our precious late Queen and her husband, who must have suffered anxiety and stress in their final months of their life because of these allegations, many unfounded against them. They probably died thinking the world thought they were racist because of Harry and Meghan. Not to mention the intimate private details Harry was giving over the fight he had with William, knowing William could never respond. He has no authority or right to stand up and complain about having his privacy invaded when he has absolutely crucified his family with exposing very private information for money.
Sam Dowler, you're a member of the wokerati Liberal elite. Can you defend Harry not bothering to show up to court today?
First of all, Belinda, please don't say car crash because that is triggering.
Oh, yes, another catastrophic.
But also, I don't want to hear penile.
The catastrophic car wreck that never was.
I don't want to hear penile ever again. Yes, look, I think I feel sorry for Harry, to be honest with you.
Why?
Because I think that these are, you know, from filing court papers to going to court is a very long time, and as we've just mentioned, like, you know, catastrophic car crashes.
He brought the case. Why do you feel sorry for him?
Yes, I know, because I think maybe they were in a different place where they were firing out there some
but he's obsessed with us.
Yeah, I know.
I
get it, but I think he doesn't want to do it, and I think it's too.
He could have called a halt to this at any point.
Yeah, but I don't think he wants to come on, you know, and then speak in court like himself, as you say, the first royal in 130 years. I think
he wants to do it.
But as we've heard already in the you know, like, in the Meghan and Harry grapevine, that they are going to pull back from talking about the royals, from doing the very thing that they are
just when the 5 court cases are out the way.
Of course. So I think, like, you know, you've got the car crash or the high-speed car chase that I think maybe was a sobering moment for them both, not just because they thought maybe their life was in danger, but also the fact that they spanned something out of control.
He's got to be very careful, because if they had repeated that statement, that ridiculous statement about the catastrophic near car chase that never was, they would be guilty of perjury if that was reported in a court of law, because it was a lie. It was a proven lie, that statement.
Completely.
So he has to be very careful tomorrow not to perjure
and
himself.
this is exactly why, because this was a story, this was one of the few stories that was followed up robustly by the American media and by us too, and found to be wrong. And I think that's going to happen with everything Harry says from now on. So he has to be very careful. And when he appears in court tomorrow, I think he's going to get the shock of his life. I don't know what he thinks the courtroom is like, but Andrew Green will be ready to tear him limb from limb. And the minute he trips up, Andrew's going to go in, and he has to go in. I mean, he's defending the Mirror on 33 different stories. I don't think Harry has the character, the capacity to deal with this kind of robustness.
And the alleged offensive happened up to 30 years ago.
Yes.
This isn't
How
something
can
that's
he-
happened.
Yes.
Why is it all happening now? This was 1993. The last one was 2011. This is years and years ago.
And I agree with Carol. Being under oath is very different to being, on Oprah, for example. For example, when Meghan said that she misremembered, that she might have told people about certain aspects, being under oath is very different. And he has the ability to perjure himself, like you said.
Yeah.
But
he's not a total idiot. He's a bit of an idiot, but he's not a total idiot. He knows that.
I'm nervous for him.
Belinda DeLucy,
I'm not.
Sam Dowler, Carol Malone, my superstar panel with me all night. But coming up, as Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick boasts of just hundreds of Albanian migrants being returned, is Rishi Sunak right to claim in a Dover speech that he is finally stopping the boats? Nigel Farage marks the Prime Minister's report cards on his migrant crisis battle plan shortly. But first, in the clash, Holly Willoughby's emotional statement slamming Philip Schofield but defending the scandal hit show Save This Morning. That's our big debate next. But what do you think? Dan at gbnews.com. Vote in our poll at GBNews on Twitter. We're back in just a moment.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
We debate whether Holly's statement slamming Philip Schofield was enough to save This Morning in the clash shortly, but time now for esteemed royal biographer Angela Levin to react to Harry's evidence, the courtroom bombshells. And of course, Harry is expected to give evidence against the owner of the Daily Mirror newspaper tomorrow, but he was still asked to attend court today if he was needed. Didn't show, though, and his lawyer David Sherborne said his client was stumped by security and travel plans and had been celebrating Princess Lilibet's birthday yesterday. Sherborne also insisted the Ginger Wincher's phone hacking claim against MGN was not inspired by a, quote, press vendetta. Further bombshell revelations were made about Harry, William and Diana's former butler, Paul Burrell, his ex-girlfriend, Chelsea Davy, Princess Diana and Michael Barrymore. So let me bring in Prince Harry's biographer now, Angela Levin. And you disagree with Harry's lawyer. Angela, you say this is a revenge mission against the press and that he might be doing it to please his wife.
Yes, he says it's his life work, which is a huge thing to say about trying to repair something or get rid of it when you're thousands of miles away. It doesn't make sense from the start. But I think he's now either self-destructing himself, which he's done a lot. You know, when he was in the army, he went to a nightclub that were women walking around with virtually no clothes on. You know, he sort of spoils things for himself. He's got a habit of doing that. Or someone is actually trying to take the carpet out from his feet and destroy him. I think that's what it is. I think it's so extraordinary and so hopeless. I don't actually believe that no one could find any people to guard him. I think that's just to sort of to soothe it over a little bit. But I spoke to a friend of mine about the judge and said, what did he really mean about surprise? And she said, it's absolutely furious. Oh, it is very, very rude. And she said that it wouldn't help him with the case because everything was there, everything was ready. You don't just not turn up. And he's got a team that could have actually got something together.
Now, Angela, you obviously are Prince Harry's biographer. You spent a very long time with him, writing your book about him. You're the journalist who knows him best. Has he always had this hatred of the press and a desire to really end freedom of the press in Britain? Now, obviously, we know he has a huge hatred of the paparazzi photographers because he blames them in part for his mother's death. But did you sense back then that he also wanted to destroy British newspapers and freedom of the press as we know it?
Yes, he did hate them from quite a young age because, as he said to me, that his mother used to cry once she separated from the then Prince Charles and she would take her children somewhere. The paparazzis and journalists would crowd round her. Now, this was her fault because Prince Charles offered to pay out of his own pocket people to protect her, but she didn't want, she wanted the freedom. But of course, there wasn't freedom for her leaving him. And he couldn't bear it to see his mother burst into tears and cry. And I think that stayed with him as something that has been with him all his life, that he just doesn't want the press. Now, the odd thing is, of course, Meghan loves it. I mean, she
and
changes
Diana
her...
loved it.
Yes.
I mean, Diana worked with the press on a regular basis.
Of course she did. Yes, she would ring up. I was in the office and she'd ring a certain journalist and get him along or get a photographer along.
Which is great. I have no problem with that. I actually love the fact that she used the press. But I just think Harry has a naive impression of his mother's relationship with the media.
Yeah, well, he was only 12 when she died, and I think his image of her is to keep her in his mind as to what she was like then, which he hardly knew very much about him. William knew more, but he didn't have that ability to think like that. That's not his fault. He was just young.
Anything that goes wrong in Harry's life, he wants to blame the media. We saw a fascinating example of it in court today. It was from a story in the Sunday People, I think, around 2003, 2004, reporting on a disagreement between William and Harry over the relationship that they would have with Paul Burrell. William seemingly wanting to get to know Paul, thinking that having a relationship with Paul could be helpful. Harry saying absolutely not. Now, without any evidence, his team are going to insist that that story was a result of phone hacking. Actually, Angela, all that would have been required from that journalist was a couple of calls to certain royal sources or to the palace. And I think it's just very, very wrong to say that stories like that caused the fracture in the relationship between William and Harry.
Well, that's why he's in trouble, isn't it? Because we can't trust him anymore. We can't believe him anymore. He exaggerates. He tells lies. We saw that with Oprah Winfrey when he said that they got married, 3 days before the actual wedding, and that was all a lie. And the poor Archbishop of Canterbury had to stand up and say, no, that's not true. I just gave them a blessing. I did not marry them. It would have been a criminal act, and I couldn't do it. So you've got all these things throughout his life where he exaggerates or makes it up. So he's in real trouble. He's in real trouble when he goes to a court.
Tomorrow is arguably the most important day since Prince Harry left the royal family in terms of his reputation, because we have to admit, Angela, those interviews, let's call them interviews, I'd say they were friendly chats with a mate, but those interviews with Oprah Winfrey, with Anderson Cooper and with Tom Bradby contained no cross-examination.
No.
So how was Harry going to cope emotionally when actually Casey Green, representing the Mirror, says, hang on a moment, what you're saying isn't true, mate?
Well, he won't cope with it, will he? And that's why he's asked that there's only a very limited time, which he has decided upon, of actually being asked questions. And they've said to him, no, you can't do that. If it's a court like this, he has to answer. And they think that it will go on for a day and a half, asking him questions, and he's not going to have it. But if he walks out, or if he's really angry or can't stand it at all, then there is no case, because if it's this type of case, then he has to answer all the questions that he's asked.
Angela, on a personal level, isn't that why his wife should be by his side
Absolutely.
tomorrow? Because he has no one to turn to for emotional support. He has no close friends in the UK anymore. There's not going to be any relative there supporting him, or even supporting him behind the scenes. So shouldn't Meghan be with him in court tomorrow?
Well, yes, she should have been with him when he was trying to boost his spare. She should have been with him at the coronation. Even though I didn't want her with him, he needed her. You could see he was absolutely lost. It was a very, very embarrassing moment walking down the aisle. And this, he needs someone there who could give him advice. I mean, whether it be good advice or bad advice, I don't know. But what interests me is that why didn't his lawyer say to him, you can't change your mind on a Friday when you're supposed to be coming on Monday? Didn't he say this will be a disaster, sir?
Yeah, but isn't it the arrogance of Harry, Angela? He lives in his own little world. He is surrounded by yes people. He no longer has anyone in his life who says, actually, there is a way of doing things. I think the arrogance of him not showing up to court today, even though he was in the country, is off the scale.
It is, but it's also panic, and it's also, I think, obeying Meghan, because it has to have something to do with that silly party. No child of two knows what a party is anyway. I think that he was given an ultimatum maybe she did as she did when she was in London, where she said, you know, I can't cope anymore, it's all that, was crying, and he'll have given in. But, you know, what did his lawyer say? He has to rise above that, otherwise he's just lost, isn't he?
Indeed. Well, look, Angela Levins, Prince Harry's biographer, you will be with me tomorrow for special coverage of the court case. We will be recreating what goes on in court.
Looking forward to it.
Harry's evidence, the verdict, tomorrow night from 9 p.m. on GB News. But still to come in the clash, will Holly Willoughby's emotional statement slamming Philip Schofield but defending the scandal hit show save This Morning? We're going to have a strong lineup do battle on that shortly. But next, as Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick boasts of just hundreds of Albanian migrants being returned, is Rishi Sunak right to claim in a Dover speech that he is finally stopping the boats? Nigel Farage marks the Prime Minister's report card on his migrant crisis battle plan straight after this.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now? Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Will Holly Willoughby's return to this morning's Save the Daytime show. We'll debate that in the Clash shortly. But first, what the Farage? And 6 months on from his pledge to tackle the illegal migrant invasion of our southern border, Rishi Sunak took a victory lap today in a speech to update Brits on how his promise was going.
The plan is starting to work. But in the 5 months since I launched the plan, crossings are now down 20% compared to last year. That's right, crossings are down 20%. And in December, I reached a deal with Albania. We've now returned 1,800 to Albania in just 6 months. Well, so far this year, the number of Albanian small boat arrivals has fallen by almost 90%.
The PM also revealed a further 2 moored barges would be commissioned to house around 1,000 more migrants at yet-to-be-identified ports. But while a drop in channel crossings is encouraging, there's so much work to be done. I mean, we're still shackled by the European Convention on Human Rights and thousands of people still flooding in undocumented. Now, Home Secretary Suella Braverman argued there is much more to do in Parliament earlier.
We've also been clear that to stop the boats, we must go further, and that the framework needs to change. And that's why, lastly, Mr. Speaker, we are reforming our laws. This is what the public wants, and all politicians should get behind our bill.
Well, she's right, but a bit of a difference in tone there. So, Nigel, what mark would you give Sunak out of 10 for his progress in stopping the boats so far?
Well, 3, because at least we've done a deal with Albania to send back 1,800 young men who should never have come in the first place. However, what he didn't tell you was that of those that came from Albania last year, 12,800 have broken their bail conditions, have absconded from hotels, from private houses, and have now joined the criminal community in this country. So actually 3's a bit generous. I'll put it back to 2. As for the boast about reducing the numbers by 20%, Rishi, it's been windy. We've had 3.5 weeks of a really persistent, strong northeasterly breeze coming down through that narrow gap of the English Channel. I've never known it at this time of the year. I've never known it at this time of the year, and it goes on until this Friday night. This Sunday, it goes calm, and it could be calm for up to 8 or 9 days. Let me tell you, this announcement in Dover today wasn't pre-planned with the media. They have cynically done it now, knowing that by next Monday, they'll be coming in their hundreds every single day. There are thousands waiting all down that coast from Dunkirk to Burke, way out to the west of Latuke. And I promise you, in a fortnight's time, these numbers will not be down 20%. And this tells you all you need to know about this Prime Minister. He's the biggest spinner of facts and figures since Tony Blair. Utterly insincere in every way. And one last point on this. He said the numbers crossing the Mediterranean are huge, but they're not huge here. Aren't we doing well? You idiot. The more that cross the Mediterranean, the more that will come to Britain because they see it as the #1 destination. Europe's failure on the Med is what has led to this. It's why I put up that breaking point poster in the referendum, because I believe that freed of the EU, we could actually be out of this. But as you've said already, stuck with the ECHR and much else. I'm sorry
But Nigel,
say,
you can say... Oh, sorry, yes?
No, I'm sorry to say, this will get much worse in the next 2 weeks.
Indeed. And Nigel, you could really see the split today, couldn't you, between Sunak and his Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, who's desperate to leave the ECHR. Sunak praised the Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, by name in his speech, and he only referred to his Home Secretary as a secondary thing. And then in Parliament today, there was no celebration from Suella, right?
No, none whatsoever. She did say we were dealing with the backlog effectively. Do you know why? We're just letting them all stay. It was unbelievable. I mean, prior to the deportations to Albania, 55% of Albanians that applied for asylum were allowed to stay. In Germany, a similar number applied. Do you know how many they got through? 0%. 0%. And in France, it was low teens. I mean, you know, whichever way you cut this, yes, Albanians are going back to a holiday destination, to an EU applicant country that is perfectly safe, with nearly 13,000 of them now joining drugs gangs and making people's lives a misery all over this country. There is nothing to celebrate.
Now, look, Nigel, moving on. Left-wing Twitter trolls, we're used to them, but they went into meltdown over the weekend, demanding a boycott of the gym chain David Lloyd in response to this tweet from my producer, Ben Leo. Now, the picture was captioned, GB News has replaced BBC News on the public TVs at my local David Lloyd gym, which is one of the biggest in the UK. So when are this lot going to discover the People's Channel is being embraced, Nigel, by everyone but them? And surely, at the very least, they should believe in the freedom of this gym chain to turn off the British bashing corporation to the People's Channel if they so desire.
Well, I'm enjoying this because I've endured the hatred of these people for 20 years and now you're involved in it too. They will never give up. Their attempt to cancel, their attempt to damn, their attempt to abuse, their sheer illiberalism of the so-called liberals. Look, you know, the very fact that the David Lloyd gyms have made that decision tells you something. You know, I've spoken to 2 or 3 quite high-profile people that appear on GB News living all over the country. They tell me that after appearances on GB News, they get spoken to by more members of the public than they've ever experienced in their lives going on the other TV news channels. That is partly because those that watch GB News really like it. But it's also because the figures by which national TV audiences are measured, it's called the Barb figures. The company that actually produces the figures is owned by, let's have a little guess here. Let's try ITV, the BBC and Sky.
Yeah.
And what you're seeing here,
it's a cabal.
It's a classic, keep new entrants out, it's our club, don't let them in. I had exactly this with UKIP 10 years ago, and look what UKIP went on to achieve, to do an historic change. And I just, you know what? And, you know, any company you work at, you'll always have a few little quibbles and gripes, of course, we all do. I complain about you all the time, you know.
Who doesn't?
But actually, Dan, there's a buzz out there. GB News is getting somewhere, and the Oppo don't like it. But I really think, a big thanks, by the way, to all our loyal listeners who've been with us through thick and thin. It wasn't the easiest birth of a TV channel, let's be frank about that. But we're now beginning. The channel has built an identity. The channel has built a reputation. It allows free speech from all wings of every debate. And you know what? The more they attack us, the happier I am. I've seen it all before. We're doing well.
Here, Nigel Farage, who will be back at 7 o'clock tomorrow night on the People's Channel, coming to a gym near you, hopefully, and hopefully a pub near you too. Nigel, thank you so much. But coming up, the former head of news at This Morning has broken her silence to expose the show's toxic, sexist and homophobic culture. So does ITV need to axe the programme for good? That's the big debate with my superstar panel coming up imminently. But first in the clash, will Holly Willoughby's emotional statement slamming Philip Schofield but defending the scandal hit show save This Morning? Kim Woodburn, Joanna Jarju and David Atherton do battle next. But what do you think? Dan at gbnews.com. Vote in our poll at GB News The Clash, straight after the break.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
My Royal Masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier coming up on Harry's D-Day in court. But first, the clash. And Holly Willoughby made her much-anticipated return to This Morning today after last being seen before co-host Philip Schofield sensationally quit in disgrace. Now, this is the moment she directly addressed the scandal for the first time and slammed her one-time friend for his behaviour. So, as ITV launches an external probe into whether Schofield's affair with a young male colleague was covered up and its bosses are ordered to give evidence in Parliament from tomorrow, was Holly's emotional statement enough to save This Morning from the axe? Dan at gbnews.com, vote in our poll at GB News. But to do battle on this, let me bring in Kim Woodburn. We know how she feels, right? Social commentator Joanna Jaju and the journalist and commentator David Atherton. So, Kim, the entire nation is waiting for your verdict, and you've got to be fair, Kim. Did you believe what Holly had to say this morning?
Absolutely not. She's one little bitch.
Oh no, Kim, you can't do that again. Why? She seemed sincere, did she not?
Look, why did she have to mention? Why did she mention that he told lies? It's been done and said. He's lost his job. Why is she rubbing it in and sitting there like, oh, she's the coronet. We at this channel. She should be fired. She's never offended Philip.
But she says she didn't know, Kim. How can you prove that she knew?
But what did she know? You know, we have yet to establish, be fair to Philip. Now, fair here. No one's established this young man was underage when he was sexually, So if the man is the right age, what has he got to apologise for? So till we know, we can't say much really, can we? He's just had an affair as a gay gentleman with a gay man.
Yeah,
If the man's
indeed. No, he hasn't done anything illegal, and no one's saying he's done anything illegal. Maybe slightly inappropriate, not illegal. But why do you have such a problem with Holly, Kim? Because today she tried to say she had no idea.
Look, I've worked with Holly. I've been on the sofa with him 3 or 4 times. I never liked the way she behaved. I never liked the way she opted out of everything. I couldn't stand it.
OK, well, let's get the other side of the argument. Let's get the other side of the argument, Kim. Joanna Jaju, you think Holly Willoughby may have just saved the show today?
I think so, absolutely. I think that it was right for her to address the elephant in the room. If she hadn't have said anything and came back and everything was all sunshine and rainbows, we would have been, it would have shown actually a lack of respect for the viewers, who a lot of them obviously did love Phil individually and loved them together as a duo on TV. And it's been the biggest news story in the news the entire week. And I think that actually Holly said just about enough. She addressed the fact that Philip did lie. She didn't go further than that, because realistically, as we've said, that is his biggest crime in this scenario. But I also think that it was right for her to address it and also just move on. And I do think that by the time she comes back from the summer holidays, the viewers will have half forgotten about it, as long as she keeps her head down and keeps a distance from Philip.
OK, David Atherton, you don't share Joanna's view. I think you're more on Kim's side of the argument. What did you think, David, about the way some people have compared it a bit to Meghan Markle, the way that Holly actually started the show today by asking, how are you?
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, I think she's pushed Meghan Markle into the silver medal position now, saccharine victim narcissism. And, when I tweeted out this morning, let me just grab my phone. I don't think I've watched a more fake vomit-inducing segment on TV. I'd only watched 3 seconds, Dan. So thank you very much, mate. I've had to go back and see the whole damn thing at 1 minute and 40 seconds. And it really was horrible. I think, to my mind, Holly Willoughby, she was friends with Philip Schofield for 17 years. They went on holiday together. They had Sunday lunch together. And she's quite happy to throw him under the bus as a friend and display her narcissism and save her career at the expense of Philip Schofield. If I was Holly Willoughby, I would have said, Philip Schofield's my friend. I'm sticking up for him. Sack me as well. That's what I would have done. I'm sorry. Oh, that's horrible, that is. All this fakery, this vacuousness.
I mean, that is the issue that a lot of people have, Kim Woodburn. Josie Gibson, who we saw there, and let's just be honest about this, Josie had no chemistry with Holly Willoughby whatsoever. That was a painful combination to watch. But the issue is, Kim, she described the show as a family, and it's a very odd family that cuts someone out the moment they make a mistake. I thought the whole point of families is that you stood by your family, even when they've done wrong.
Of course you do. And you know what tickles me? I'm sorry. When she's there, this whimpering silly bitch. Oh,
Kim, behave.
Now, stop. Now, you get me on. Here's what I'm like. Now, listen to me. She lied and still lies to this day about the Queen lying in state, when Philip has admitted now he's left the show that they both sneaked in. And did she? So Philip's lied. Are you going to apologise because you lied, Holly, you little angel?
So you think she owes the public an apology over Qgate as well? Is that what you're saying?
She lied, and Philip's admitted they sneaked in, which we knew anyway. Now he's gone. He's nothing till he's done telling the truth. We did. She sits there this morning. Oh, Philip, he lied. You lie. You lie all the time. She's boring, and I'll tell you something. Without Philip, although he could be nasty, I'm not going to take it back. It's going to be a very boring show without him, dear, because she's got nothing to say. She's a two-faced horror. I mean, why Philip sits at home and look, I know he's done wrong. Come on, well, we don't know he's done wrong. We don't know this young man's underage.
He wasn't. No. Just to clarify, because we've got to be careful about this. He met the young man when he was 15 years old. By the time they started a relationship, he was over 18.
Yeah, let's presume he was. Let's not look on the blacker side part. Let's give Phil the benefit of the doubt, unless we do otherwise, which we don't love. If he was over 18, it's a legitimate relationship. Who cares what he did? But the fact remains,
Fair enough.
He should be there.
Fair enough. No, I hear you loud and clear, Kim Woodburn, and the nation wanted to hear it from you today. Thank you so much, and thank you too to the social commentator Joanna Jarju and the journalist and commentator David Atherton. Your verdict is now in. Oh my goodness, you're with Kim Woodburn on this one overwhelmingly. Just 9% of you agree that Holly's statement on This Morning was enough to save the show. 91% of you think it wasn't. Now coming up, Prince Harry's staggering no-show at his phone hacking trial today saw the Ginger Whinger blasted. So, what do Phil Dampier and Lady Colin Campbell think? My royal masterminds with expert analysis soon. But next, with a rattled This Morning boss left muttering about aubergines when quizzed about the Schofield scandal. Does ITV need to pull the plug on the show? My superstar panel will get stuck into that. Plus, we're going to have a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages, hot off the press. We're back in just 2 minutes' time. Don't go anywhere.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, has anyone seen this hypocrite? The Duke of Sussex was missing today from the High Court as his individual case against the publisher of the Daily Mirror got underway. And after the judge expressed his surprise at the Prince's absence, has his mission to restrict reporting on the rich and powerful gotten off to a disastrous start ahead of Harry's historic cross-examination tomorrow? My royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier, on deck to give their essential preview shortly and reveal why Princess Diana, Michael Barrymore, Chelsea Davy and Paul Burrell have all been dragged into this extraordinary story today. Elsewhere, as This Morning's former head of news speaks out about the show's, quote, toxic and sexist culture, its editor Martin Frizzell gave this response.
Is there a toxic work environment at This Morning?
I'll tell you what's toxic. I've always found toxic. Is aubergine. Do you like aubergine? Do you?
But while woke ITV bosses attempt to laugh off the crisis, can the disgraced daytime show battle through this cover-up storm? That's the big debate with my superstar panel next. And tonight, I'm joined by Carol Malone, Sam Dowler and Belinda DeLucy. Plus, Holly Willoughby was back on the sofa today with a pre-prepared speech, and fans of the hit US Me Too drama The Morning Show have noticed some astounding parallels.
All we can do now is be the family that we are.
Exactly, exactly. You are part of this family, and we will get through this together.
Fleet Street icon Calvin McKenzie discusses how Holly's statement was stranger than fiction in Uncancelled. Also on the way tonight, could Rishi Sunak be blocking the release of WhatsApp messages to the COVID inquiry because they reveal his plot to topple Boris Johnson? Allies of the former PM certainly think so, including Tory peer Lord Cruddas, who says the coup is starting to unravel. We react to this bombshell accusation in the media buzz, and the BBC under fire for its latest episode of Casualty, which hailed a trans character getting a double mastectomy before the watershed.
Anna, yeah? Sir got the date for the top surgery.
And before you say anything, I know a double mastectomy is not to be taken lightly.
So has the woke beep forgotten its safeguarding responsibilities? They are going to respond to this in the next hour. And in tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass, is COVID dictator Jacinda Ardern deserving of her recently announced damehood? I don't think so. We'll also bring you a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages hot off the press right after the news headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. The top story tonight on GB News. The Prime Minister says his plan to tackle the arrival of illegal migrants to the UK in small boats and the asylum backlog is starting to work. But he admits there is still a long way to go. During a speech he made in Kent today, the Prime Minister said small boat crossings were down 20%. Rishi Sunak also announced a further 2 barges to accommodate a further 1,000 migrants, but wouldn't comment on where they'll be located. The Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has welcomed the news, but says the government still needs to secure more return agreements with other countries. But the Prime Minister says the government is using every tool at its disposal to tackle the problem.
We've now returned 1,800 to Albania in just 6 months. We've gone from accepting around 1 in 5 Albanian asylum cases to now just 1 in 50. In line with our European partners. And what is the result of all of this? Well, so far this year, the number of Albanian small boat arrivals has fallen by almost 90%.
Well, in other news today, thousands of British Airways and Boots employees are among those who've had their personal data breached following a cyber attack. BA says their staff were among those hit by the attack on Zealous. That's a payroll provider used by hundreds of companies in Britain. Pharmacy group Boots also said the attack included some of their employees' personal details, including names, addresses and banking details. As you've been hearing, Holly Willoughby has returned to the daytime television show this morning for the first time today, following her co-presenter Philip Schofield's exit. Turning our attentions now to the United States, where the former Vice President Mike Pence has declared he will be running for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination. Pence will be running against the former US president and the front-runner at the moment, Donald Trump. He's expected to formally launch his campaign with a video and a speech on Wednesday. Now, the judge hearing Prince Harry's case against Mirror Group newspaper says he was surprised the Duke didn't turn up today at the High Court. It was previously thought Prince Harry would be there to give evidence over claims that newspaper articles contained information that were gathered using unlawful methods. It's now been confirmed Harry will be in the witness box tomorrow to give their evidence. Mirror Group newspapers is contesting the claims. And some good news to finish with. Princess Eugenie has announced the birth of her second child today. It's a boy, and they've called him Ernest George Ronnie Brooksbank. Eugenie posted a photograph on her Instagram account earlier on today saying the baby boy was born on the 30th of May. And Princess Eugenie saying Big Brother August already loves being a big brother to little Ernest. Congratulations to them. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tomorrow's news tonight now in our media buzz, and the first front pages are in. The Metro leads with Prince Harry's High Court no-show as the disruptive Duke manages to irritate Judge Mr Justice Fancourt from day one of his phone hacking case against Mirror Group newspapers. And the Daily Star, well, they're borrowing, I'm very proud of this actually, my affectionate nickname for the Prime Minister by leading with Fishy Rishi. Gets his chopper out again, reporting on the fact Sunak took a helicopter 70 miles to Kent today instead of getting the train. My superstar panel return now. Top Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, the social commentator Sam Dowler and the former Brexit Party MEP Belinda de Lucy. Now, Holly Willoughby returned to This Morning today and immediately tried to distance herself from her former co-star and ex-BFF Philip Schofield. But the wider questions about the culture at ITV will just not go away, with bombshell revelations from former head of news on This Morning, Emily Maddock, claiming she quit her job as an exec on the show due to the, quote, toxic, sexist and homophobic atmosphere behind the scenes. The experienced journalist also told Glamour magazine, "Did I hear rumours about Schofield and his young male lover? Yes. It was an open secret amongst the production team. Did I think that those in power knew about Schofield and his lover? Yes. I believe they were complicit." And earlier today, This Morning editor Martin Frizzell gave this bizarre response to a young female journalist.
Is there a toxic work environment at This Morning?
I'll tell you what's toxic. I've always found toxic is aubergine. Do you like aubergine? Do you?
Is there a toxic work environment?
But do you like
at This
aubergine?
Morning?
Because I don't like aubergine. It's just a personal thing.
Is there a toxic work environment at This Morning?
Now, Sam Dowler, you know Emily Maddock well. I've known Martin Frizzell for years. I have no personal problem at all. It's very odd to me because he was a former crisis management PR. That is the last thing you do. You've got a young female journalist asking you about very legitimate claims from your former head of news, and he's making jokes about aubergines?
Well, Martin Frizzell was obviously trying to, you know, lighten the situation, like trying to be like, oh no, you know, I mean, personally, I don't like aubergines either, they make me gassy. But I think, you know, that was obviously his, you know, his like, you know what it's like when people turn up on somebody's door. You've known this many years. Like people often say like, oh, you know, ridiculous things because they just want to get away from the conversation.
Yeah, but why did he not actually address the young female journalist and the allegation?
Because he didn't have maybe something prepared. I don't know. I'm not going to protect him. Like I don't.
Okay, so what do you know Emily Maddock very well? What do you make of her revelations of her time on the screen?
I think that obviously toxicity, bullying, etc., is subjective. I think that I have, you know, friends on This Morning as well who would turn around and say that there was no toxic atmosphere.
And they've loved working there.
Yeah, and have loved working there. So again, it is to do with how you feel in a job.
A picture is being painted here, isn't there? And ITV are not really doing anything to actually deal with what is a huge crisis engulfing their organisation.
It is a massive crisis, and I was very shocked over the weekend because Schofield did 2 interviews. He did one with the Sun newspaper, and he did one with Amber Jan for the BBC. And what I saw happening there, and it was very disturbing to me. He says, I'm not going to make any excuses, and then proceeded to make them. And one of them was that all the heat he's getting and all the hate he's getting is about homophobia. I mean, this is absolute nonsense. It is only last year when he was praising the British public for their support over him coming out as gay and the love that he felt from people, you know, when he declared he was gay. So this homophobia thing, it's almost like he's looking for something to blame that is not to do with him. And maybe when you're where he is now, maybe when you've lost everything and you're at rock bottom, maybe you have to find something else to blame that isn't 100% down to you. But
because you initially felt sympathy for him, Carol.
I wrote my whole column about this on Saturday, and I was starting to feel towards the end of last week, enough now, maybe it's enough now. And then I watched these, I listened to the Rajan interview and read the Sun one, and I couldn't believe what he was actually saying. And the thing that really shocked me to my core is he said, do people want me to die?
No.
And now, and he compared himself, he said, this is what Caroline Flack must have felt like. No, it isn't. Caroline Flack had mental issues for a long time. She had been diagnosed as bipolar in the months leading up to her suicide. That is not Philip Schofield's story. He has lost his job and his reputation, which are 2 entirely different things. But it's almost like, you know, when he's saying that, it's almost to me, I felt manipulated by that quote. I thought what he was saying to the media was, if you write any more stuff about me, I may kill myself.
Do you think there was a threat then, like a threat?
No, I don't think it was a threat. I think he was manipulating.
It's more subtle than that.
It was much more subtle than that.
But the thing is, for me, Belinda
shocked,
Lucy,
right?
and I think it's very important to point out, this story is not really about the private life of Philip Schofield. I've said right since day one, I'm not interested in that. But it is about the fact that ITV have engaged in what I believe, and I know they deny it, and I'm more than happy for them to come for me on this, but I believe, and I have proof of it, that they have engaged in a corporate cover-up.
Yes, I think that's what's really sticking in people's throats, because, to be honest, we don't know the full story. We've never heard from this young lad, his side of the story either, and it's really about spotlight on ITV now, because our young people in a safe work environment in ITV, you know, what lies did they have to tell to cover up if it was a cover-up? But what was a really interesting reflection on the disconnection between ITV and their audience was Holly's little speech today, straight from the autocue, from her heart, whatever, whichever it was.
You didn't feel it was genuine?
Well, but I think it's indicative of how this morning has completely got it wrong. I mean, are you OK? It's almost like it was going to be followed by, it's not enough to survive, we have to thrive, that kind of... That's not what the British people... It is a bit Meghan Markle-y. And do you know what was really weird about the speech? The whole non-binary pronoun thing that she started doing about Phil, like they had to step down and they did this and they did that. What was that all about? She wasn't talking to the ordinary common person.
That's just normal language, I think.
But this is a bloke
it's not.
who, a few short months ago, she was besties with him. Now she can't even say his name, and which I thought was the height of hypocrisy.
But then Josie Gibson is calling it a family.
But you know,
I mean, it's the most dysfunctional family in Britain.
I think bottom line...
But all that nonsense there with them hugging at the start of the programme, enough of that. The public aren't buying that anymore.
And the nation is not in trauma.
The bottom line is, I think this is a cumulative effect. I think, you know, that people, you know, we're getting sick of the Holly and Phil show, and then we had Qgate, and then we had Phil's brother, and then we had this, and it just sort of built up over time.
OK, look, I want to move on, though, because we told you last week how fuming motorists were taking Just Stop Oil protests into their own hands as anger with the eco-terrorist disruption finally reached boiling point. Well, tensions haven't eased. If these clips from London today are anything to go by. It's time idle cops allowing public anger to explode did their jobs and stop these green goons before they get started, before someone gets seriously hurt. Belinda Lucy, Sam Dalla, Carol Malone, do stand by, because coming up, as Boris allies, including Lord Cruddas, claim Rishi Sunak is blocking the release of text to the COVID inquiry because they'll reveal his plot to topple Boris for the first time, should the witch hunt against the former PM now end? My Superstar panel will return to debate that very soon. But first, as a High Court judge and the Mirror Group's barrister both slam Prince Harry for failing to show up and wasting court time today, is his deranged mission to destroy the British press already a disaster? My royal masterminds Phil Dampier and Lady Colin Campbell are on deck to deliver their unflinching verdict straight after this.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "No, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Calvin Mackenzie gives his brutal verdict on the crisis engulfing ITV shortly, but first, my royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier. And Prince Harry has knocked some important noses out of joint on the very first day of his High Court phone hacking battle against Mirror Group newspapers, being slammed for wasting the court's time after failing to even show up for the opening of his own legal case. Now, having flown into the UK late, choosing instead to stay behind in the States to celebrate daughter Lilibet's 2nd birthday, the disruptive Duke drew disdain from Andrew Green KC, representing Mirror Group newspapers, who fumed, "It is unsatisfactory that he was not available for the first day of this trial. It is absolutely extraordinary." Now, Harry's absence hasn't prevented some fascinating revelations on the opening day, however, with a 2003 headline from The People reporting an apparently private disagreement between Princes William and Harry over how to handle their late mother's former butler Paul Burrell being used by Harry's lawyer David Sherborne as apparent evidence of phone hacking, which the Mirror forcefully denies. So, Lady C, as both the High Court judge and the Mirror Group's own barrister just totally slammed Harry today, this mission to destroy the British media isn't off to a good start, is it?
It certainly isn't. Isn't it wonderful? I mean, Harry couldn't have shot himself in the foot more effectively if he had been a sharpshooter. Can you imagine antagonising Mr. Justice Fancourt, who had ordered him to be available for for the first day's hearing, and he completely ignored it. Does he think Mr. Justice Fancourt is going to be impressed by the fact that he stayed behind for Lilibet's second birthday? Lilibet doesn't know what day of the week it is, much less whether it's her birthday or not. The birthday could have been celebrated on Saturday. His arrogance, impertinence, and delusionalism could not have been more apparent, and his disrespect for everybody and everything except himself.
Well, especially seeing he was in the country. I mean, Phil Damper, I said earlier, as soon as he heard that, why didn't he just get his ass from whatever posh hotel he's staying at and get to court?
Yeah, good evening, Dal. I've actually seen something on Twitter tonight suggesting that he was having a few drinks in Soho House last night. I don't know if that's true. It might be just one of those rumours on Twitter, so I don't put any great story. But it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, it makes you wonder whether he's kind of just sort of given up and he's just regarding this whole thing as a bit of a joke. I mean, as Lady C says, it's, the arrogance of it, the idea that he couldn't have had this party for Archie, for Lilibet a day or two earlier. He's just lost all sense of perspective, hasn't he? And when you think he spent that time in Afghanistan with other soldiers who missed their families for months on end, the idea that he couldn't have just moved this birthday party is ridiculous. So I should be fascinated to see tomorrow if Justice Fancourt, the judge, who clearly wasn't impressed today, actually says something to him and rebukes him in court.
Well, I hope so, and he may have to give an extra half day of evidence on Wednesday, so it serves him right. Now, Lady C, there were new revelations today in court. The problem is, as Casey Green for the Mirror says, there remains absolutely no evidence that Harry's phone was ever hacked. However, they're going right back 30 years, suggesting that 2 letters sent between Princess Diana and Michael Barrymore suggest that phone hacking might have taken place. The first letter being an arrangement to meet between Diana and Barrymore. The second letter being her apologising to Barrymore for the fact that the meeting got out after they swapped phone details. But all of it, Lady C, seems highly circumstantial without any actual proof of hacking.
Well, not only is there no proof of hacking, it's way out of time. And 30 years ago, if you had somebody's phone number and you phoned it up and you put in 0000 and they hadn't bothered to change their code, you could get their messages. I mean, that was well known throughout the whole of the world, not only in Fleet Street. So if it happened all over the world with all sorts of people. But it's 30 years ago. It has no relevance. The fact that I kill you doesn't mean that I'm going to hang for having killed Phil. I mean, I'm sorry, the crime has to be particular to the event and the person. And they're dragging in everything but the kitchen sink.
But Phil, it's almost like for Harry, it doesn't matter that there's no proof here, because what he wants to do is be on a platform reported all around the world in a courtroom saying the British media ruined my life. And we saw it again today in the opening arguments from the permatanned lawyer representing Harry, David Sherborne, who said their relationship, his former relationship with Chelsea Davy, there she is, coming up again. Don't know how Meghan's going to feel about that, because it really does start to feel like Chelsea Davy was the one who got away when Harry is concerned. But he's saying, look, this relationship was effectively destroyed. We couldn't trust anyone because we thought it was all down to hacking. So maybe Harry doesn't care, Phil, if he loses and if the evidence is there. He just wants his day in court.
I think that's right. He just does want his day in court. Apparently, Sherborne was rambling on today. He went on and on and on. And at one point, they couldn't find him in the afternoon, apparently. And the judge said, "Where is he? Can someone go and get him?" And one of the reporters shouted out, "Do we have to?" And everyone laughed. Apparently, because he does like the sound of his own voice, as we saw from the Lewis inquiry. But no, the entire thing seems to be based on the sort of premise that because a load of celebrities got hacked, Harry must have been hacked, but there's no evidence for it. So it's going to be fascinating to see him kicked around by, what's his name, Andrew Green, isn't it, I think, representing the Mirror tomorrow. Quite how he's going to come out of it, I don't know. But it's going to be... I was going to
ask this, Lady C, can Harry cope psychologically with a cross-examination? Because, of course, so far, Harry's only been questioned by his mates Oprah Winfrey, Tom Bradby, Anderson Cooper, they failed in their journalistic duty to cross-examine Harry. So can he psychologically cope with this cross-examination tomorrow, Lady C?
Remember how outraged Harry was when Tom Bradby dared to get near to the truth. Harry is arrogant. Harry is used to laying down the law. Harry is used to telling everybody what they should think, and if they dare to disagree with him, he does not deign to put them in their place, to remind them that he is a prince and they are just rabble. Well, it's not going to work with Mr. Justice Fancourt, because judges take respect for the court very seriously. And let's remember, the purpose of cross-examination is to grill the witness to get to the truth, not to
and to test their credibility. No, of course. His job is to test Harry's credibility and to try and prove that he's a liar. Final word, Phil Dampier.
I was just going to say, Dan, I hope he doesn't turn out with a hangover, because he's going to have to concentrate for 1.5 days. It's not going to be... The thing I don't quite understand is, what about the journalists? Why are they not being called as witnesses, any of them? Do you know the answer to that? Why none of them are actually appearing in court?
Well, I think
why various people wouldn't be called to give evidence for the mirror or against them. But it seems strange to be going on about stories that weren't got by phone hacking.
Well, yeah, and look, I think it's risky.
Can I say why? It's irrelevant. Yes. The evidence of those journalists is irrelevant. We're speaking about events that are out of the limitations time period. It's totally irrelevant.
Yeah, and also from Migrant newspaper's point of view, it's very difficult to put journalists on the stand when we know journalists are never going to reveal their sources, because you wouldn't and I wouldn't. But look, Lady Colin Campbell, Phil Dampier, let me tell you, are going to be with me tomorrow night for a special edition of the show, Harry's Evidence, The Verdict, from 9 p.m. here on GB News. But coming up in Uncancelled, Fleet Street legend Calvin McKenzie gives his unfiltered take on Harry's never-ending attacks on the British press. Plus, did Holly Willoughby model her comeback off Jennifer Aniston? And the US drama The Morning Show.
All we can do now is be the family that we are.
Exactly, exactly. You are part of this family, and we will get through this together.
Those extraordinary parallels explored by Calvin soon. But next in the Media Buzz, is Rishi Sunak blocking the release of texts to the COVID inquiry because they'll reveal his former plot to topple Boris Johnson? My superstar panel debate that next. Plus, I'll bring you more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages hot off the press. Don't go anywhere.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of trousers?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News. Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight in our Media Buzz. More front pages just delivered. The Sun leads with "That was a swift one," reporting on the split between pop star Taylor Swift and the 1975 rocker Matt Healy. He's the son of Denise Welch. After just 1 month. The paper also carries an exclusive that Holly Willoughby will never talk of Philip Schofield again. The Daily Mail leads with the extra £1,000 a year many British families will be forced to fork out under Labour's green energy plans. Meanwhile, columnist Jan Moir gives her verdict on Holly's return to This Morning, declaring once you waded through Holly's compassion, her words were utterly brutal. And the Daily Express, they've got Holly there too. But they actually lead on Rishi Sunak's revelation today that a further 2 more barges will be moved to as yet unidentified British ports, housing some 1,000 Channel migrants. It also pays tribute, and this is really important actually, to the last of the few remaining D-Day veterans who are going to remember their fallen comrades tomorrow. What incredible men they are, and I just hate actually even considering a day when we're not going to have those great men on D-Day. So that's an important one to mark tomorrow. But more on the Media Buzz now with tonight's superstar panel. Top Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, the political commentator Sam Dowler and the former Brexit Party MEP Belinda de Lucy. Now, the Westminster witch hunt against Boris Johnson continues, but could the coup against him committed by the current PM be about to be exposed? Sources close to the ousted PM claim that Sunak is blocking the release of text to the COVID inquiry because they will reveal his inside plot to boot Boris out of number 10. There are also whispers that the messages contain evidence of lockdown breaches by Sunak or his advisors. And while Boris has said he is happy to share all of his material with the inquiry directly, the Cabinet Office has now threatened to take away public funding for his legal representation if he releases their evidence without permission, his evidence without their permission. Now, Nadine Dorries has reacted saying this is not a good look, and that all evidence provided should be unfettered and not restricted by government censorship. And Carol Malone, Lord Cruddas, who is really a huge former donor to the Tory party, big Boris Johnson supporter, he thinks that Sunak doesn't want to release the messages because it will expose the coup.
Yeah, I mean, we always knew there was a coup, didn't we? We knew.
We didn't know for how long.
We
Sunak
knew at the
was
time.
working
Yeah,
against
but I think
sounds like it was months and months and months, Carol.
And of course, and you know, last week, remember when it first came out, and the Cabinet Office said that they didn't want these released because it was an intrusion on Boris's privacy, and we all knew there was a rabbit off then because the Cabinet Office hate Boris. They don't give a toss about him or his privacy. Hence, they reported him to 2 separate police forces for lockdown breaches. So this didn't make sense to me at the time, and at the time I was thinking, well, this is because Rishi's got something to hide, and it transpires that could actually be the case. But you know, these two have to stop this nonsense because this inquiry, which I think is already turned into a farce, it's like a carry-on film without the laughs. It's turning into a massive gravy train for a whole load of lawyers and quasi-judges and people. It's going to drag on for years, and this kind of nonsense is going to make it drag on even longer. You know, all the other big inquiries that we've had, you know, the Chilcot inquiry, that that took 13 years after we went to war with Iraq. The sexual abuse inquiry after the Savile.
And all you need to do is look
years.
at this new report today to work out how terrible lockdown was.
Well, yeah, and we,
without this inquiry.
You know what I think this inquiry should be concentrating on? Not on Boris, not on Sunak. It's the one, I think, the single most important question this inquiry should be trying to find out. How did the virus get here and around the world?
But they're not even looking at that.
But they don't have the guts.
They're not even looking at that.
No,
No, of course, because we'd have to ask questions of our precious friends in China. They're not friends. Look at the havoc they've unwreaked. But Sam, I just want to go back to this witch hunt against Boris, though. Surely even you now on the hard left can concede that that's exactly what this is.
Well, first of all, Dan, I'm not on the hard left, I'm a centrist. And is it a witch hunt?
They all say that.
Is it a witch hunt if you're looking for a witch? You know, at the end of the day, I think we are in a situation where the upper echelons of the Tory party are falling apart.
Correct.
Why exactly is Rishi going after Boris, he's already left government?
We know why, because he's a threat.
Yeah, I know, exactly, because he's a threat. And, like, you know, what are we going to... Like I said to my partner today, like, you know, will Rishi release, you know, his text, like, redacted? And he was like, what does redacted mean? So I explained it to him, and he was incredulous. He was like, but why would text be redacted? Because he wants to cover things up and cover more things up. And, like, it's embarrassing, once again, at the top of the Tory party. Leave this alone. Why can't they just leave it alone? Because, they're a party in free fall as it is. So why do we have to talk about this? Like, as my mum said when I spoke to her, it's a soap opera. It's another soap opera.
I know Boris has now said he's prepared to release all the text messages, but are there not issues with that, Belinda? Because there were personal things being discussed on those messages too.
Yes, I mean, the government does have a point when there are very personal, private messages. It could be a Data Protection Act issue. However, this is a hugely important inquiry. This is about lives and deaths of people. The COVID inquiry is one of the most important things at the moment that's going on. And the fact that Rishi is delaying it the optics are terrible for him.
But Carol, I think this whole inquiry is a joke because the goalposts have been wrong from the start. It's all about, if we'd locked down 3 weeks earlier, would we have stopped the COVID pandemic? That is the wrong question to be answered.
It is, the families who... There was 226,000 people died during the pandemic here. And the families who lost loved ones are looking at this ridiculous political point scoring between our MPs and thinking, what is this inquiry supposed to be about? You know, and I'm sure that by the time this is over, in 10 years' time, because it will take 10 years, it will have been pointless because medicine will have moved on by then, pandemics will have moved on.
Well, the bigger point is...
It's a huge waste
The bigger point is, if there was another virus unleashed, and you make the very good point, this virus was unleashed by China, what if they do it again?
Yeah, exactly.
And we still have those absolute lunatics on stage, like Professor Neil Ferguson, who gets everything wrong, prepared to put this country into lockdown for months or years, and that's why I'm worried about this dragging on.
But this is an inquiry into how we dealt with it, into lockdown. It's not about, it's not about the medical stuff side of it.
It's about It's how we handle the next pandemic.
Indeed.
So it is about...
We're only going to lock down the next pandemic if some sort of, flesh-eating virus where if you go outside, you turn into a zombie.
Don't be so sure about that, Sam, because you saw how much the establishment wanted to lock us down last time. Now, look, the BBC is airing its woke agenda again in a storyline in the long-running medical drama Casualty, but it's triggered some concerns tonight around child safety. So this was an episode aired at 10:20 p.m, pre-Watershed, and a character played by the trans actor Aaron Smellhurst revealed they were getting top surgery, also known as a double mastectomy. And for the kids watching, this incredibly serious and potentially traumatic surgery is depicted as a cause for celebration, with one cast member even unveiling a boob cake. Watch.
Yeah? Sir got the date for the top surgery.
And before you say anything, I know a double mastectomy is not to be taken lightly.
I didn't say anything.
Well, for now, at least, I'm just happy that I'll finally look like the person I feel like on the inside.
Right, 3, 2, 1. Do you like it?
It's genius.
Oh, yes, I'm glad. I was worried.
Now, responding to those scenes, the campaign group Safe Schools Alliance said a new low for the BBC, which has continually appeased the ideologues in their organisation rather than engaging with experts who understand child development and safeguarding. We approached the BBC for a comment, and tonight they have responded. So this is what someone speaking on behalf of Casualty at the BBC has said. Casualty is a fictional drama series with a rich history of covering topical topics. As this storyline develops in future episodes, it will be explored from a range of perspectives in a sensitive and considered way.
Fine. That was as female mutilation. It's horrific.
Belinda Lucy isn't happy about it. Sam Dowler loves it.
I think it's perfectly fine.
Of course you do. You don't have to chop off your breasts.
Do you like that?
No.
No, that's
OK. Well, look, do stand by, because my superstar panel will be back, and we're discussing Jacinda Ardern, who has somehow bagged a damehood. But will New Zealand's COVID dictator be crowned the greatest Britain or Union jackass? My goodness, I think there's only one choice. Find out very soon, though. But next and uncancelled as Prince Harry steps up his deranged attack against the freedom of the press. How will he fare tomorrow when he becomes the first royal in 130 years to give evidence in court? Plus, Embattled This Morning brought back Holly Willoughby to our screens today. But was she ripping off the fictional US drama The Morning Show? The parallels between these two are shocking. Calvin McKenzie is going to be with me to dissect it, and I'll show you exactly why in mere moments. We're back in just 2 minutes' time.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
It's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Now, Holly Willoughby made her much-anticipated return to This Morning today, and in typical ITV style, she came prepared with a pre-written statement to get the viewers back on side. However, for fans on the hit US drama The Morning Show, starring Jennifer Aniston and based around her co-presenter Steve Carell, or at least played by Steve Carell, being forced out of his job in a sex scandal, Holly's speech sounded strangely familiar. Look.
It feels very strange indeed, sitting here without Phil.
Mitch Kessler, my co-host and partner of 15 years, was fired today for sexual misconduct.
And I imagine that you might have been feeling a lot like I have. Shaken, troubled, let down.
And to you at home, I understand how you must be feeling, because I and the whole team here at The Morning Show are feeling the same way. Shock, disappointment, disbelief.
Yeah, all we can do now is be the family that we are.
Exactly, exactly.
You are part of this family, and we will get through this together.
Calvin, life imitating art. Can I just say, though, I don't want to be part of that family because you do something wrong and you're thrown under the bus, never to be spoken about again.
Yeah, I know. No, that was great, by the way. Great, pure theatre, right? I like the line that Jan Moyer used about this, saying that she was wearing white because it was a whitewash. Do you know what? I don't believe this will do Holly any good either. I think the idea...
Well, what should she have done today, then?
I tell you what she should do. She should have said, "Do you know what, this is not..." After all, you know her. She's actually a very tough, very clever person. Actually, what she should have done is said, "Look, this is not for me. It's time for a new... You need to get some new people in." And I think just battling...
And some people hope she was actually going to quit today. They thought it would be the best thing for her.
That is the best thing for her. If I was going to give her any advice, I'd say call it a day and set out on a new path for yourself, because actually, no matter what she says, what she does, nobody's going to believe a word of it.
But still huge questions for ITV.
No, for ITV, look, the guy I think it's all over for is, I think it's all over for LIGO, to be honest with you, who, by the way, his daughter works for the agency, right, that represents this new lady, this Big Brother lady.
Josie. Well, I have to say, I thought there must be some connection, because otherwise, how the hell did she get that job? I mean, that was a charisma bypass.
Well, when you see them side by side, you kind of know she's not a threat to Holly. So Holly will keep all her sponsorships. Everything will be fine for her. But in the end of the day, she's going to go. It is at the end. She knows it. ITV know it. But they keep on losing all their stars. If Ant and Dec don't work for ITV, surely it's time, and this is my suggestion, is Rupert Murdoch should go in now, totally bombed out share price, completely clapped out creative management, in utter disarray. He should just buy it. He could buy it for chump change, and then he can start putting Piers and Co, make them a success, because they're never going to be a success.
De-woke ITV.
He could de-woke ITV, and it would be fantastic. So, Rupert, my advice, you know what a great fan I am of yours, right? Go in and buy it.
Now, look, Calvin, it's time to get your verdict on Harry's evidence, the courtroom bombshells. So, Calvin Mackenzie, huge day for Harry tomorrow. The first time a royal will have been questioned under oath in a courtroom for 130 years. It looks like the Mirror's KC Green is going to go for him. Is this going to be a disaster for Harry?
I think it will expose him for what he is. One of the aspects of the way he feels is he's never given the credit for his intelligence. I think what you're going to discover is just plain dim, right? And on that basis, he faces... I have spent some time in a libel court, as you might expect, over the years, right? It is a terrible thing. Those QCs are there not to make you look good, right? He's not paying them. He hasn't got a book to flog. He is trying to conjure up evidence against the Daily Mirror. That guy, the QC for the Mirror Group, is described by Blackstone, one of the chambers, as a beast. So there's a lot of pressure on him to get a zinger into Harry, and there's a tremendous amount of pressure on Harry to prove that he's clever. He is not clever. He won't be able to remember it, and he will make a fool of himself. And although the Mirror haven't got a strong case, my bet is that he will not have helped himself by spending 2 days in the court and not turning up. Look, I know about these things. Not turning up when you are the main person in a trial like this in the High Court is a serious error. If anybody else had done it, a judge would have demanded that he appear that second.
So he's already getting special treatment, though.
He is already getting special treatment, and he has made an error, so that puts him on the back foot. But the biggest back foot, if you spend 6 hours being questioned about something that happened, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, it'd be bloody difficult for him to remember. And as he fails to remember and can't flesh out the allegations, so the case begins to collapse. And he is going to face more of that. I'm absolutely certain, 101% certain, that he's going to lose the Sun case. He may well lose this one. I'm sure he's going to lose the Mail case, absolutely sure of it. This will have cost him millions of pounds. Of course, it's not his millions, it was his mother's millions, or it was his grandmother's millions. He doesn't care. But most people will not go into those High Court battles without a lot of evidence. He clearly, in my view, hasn't got the evidence. And every response he makes is going to be global news. To my mind, he's in big trouble.
I mean, King Charles described this as a suicide mission. His brother, Prince William, thinks he's completely mad for doing this. Will they be proven right tomorrow?
I think 100% right. I think this will be a disaster which will hang around his neck, and it will not do his view of the UK much good either, and it won't do our view of him any good whatsoever.
And it's so ironic, isn't it? Because last week when you were off, there's this big story...
There's no need to make a point.
Leaked to The Sun saying, you know, oh, they're going to stop talking about the royal family. Well, not in these court cases, because remember, there's also going to be a lot of dirty laundry about his family revealed too.
There will be a lot of dirty laundry. There's probably also be quite a lot of dirty laundry being exercised among the executives of Talk TV, who, of course, were prominent members of the Mirror Group during the difficult periods that Harry will be talking about.
Calvin Mackenzie. Uncancelled tonight as ever. Thank you so much, and we'll speak to you later in the week, Calvin. But it's time now to reveal tonight's greatest Britain and Union jackass. My superstar panel return. Carol Malone, who's your nominee for tonight's Greatest Britain?
Mine is the protesters in London today who took on the Just Stop Oil protesters. They snatched their banners, they shoved them out of the way. It's good, you know, and the police just made 2 arrests. The police have got to get to grips with this, otherwise there is going to be civil unrest in this country.
I loved the man that did that. I was fully with him. Sam Dowler, your nominee.
It's Ruth Langsford, who deftly spoke to Holly Willoughby when her husband is in the centre of all this mess. She spoke with grace and diplomacy, and good for her.
And Belinda de Lucy, your nominee.
Mine is an honorary Brit. It is Donald Trump for calling the gender transitioning of children, child abuse, mutilation and left-wing insanity, and vowing to outlaw it if he wins the next election. Despite having shares in pharma companies, he wants to wipe it out. UK should follow suit. It's chemical castration of children, and it has to be made criminal.
Sam, you're disagreeing with that?
No, of course I'm disagreeing with that. That's not the point at all. Unless you know a trans child who actually is going through that.
There's no such thing as leave children alone.
Of course there is. You don't know any children with gender dysphoria, of course.
Excuse me, adults projecting this stuff on children?
It's not about adults projecting it at all. It's about children who can't feel their own way through.
I have children.
Yes, I'm
really sorry.
I'm sure you do.
You're talking out of your sweet derriere.
As are you.
It sound like an insult because she has children.
I'm sure you do.
Call time on that one. Yep. I'm actually going to go with Sam Dowler, though, and Ruth Langsford as our greatest Britain, because, look, Ruth is in a really difficult position. Yep. Her husband, Eamon Holmes, great guy. He has really strong views on this. But Ruth has to turn up to work at ITV, do the handovers for Holly Willoughby. She is an absolute pro. And let me just tell the people at ITV, Ruth Langsford is one of your greatest assets right now. So make sure you look after her. Uni and Jackass time now. Carol Malone, your nominee.
Mine is Phil Schofield, who, after those self-pitying, self-justifying interviews at the weekend, tried to say his sacking, his fall from grace, was to do with homophobia. It was not. It was about an older man abusing his power and his position to have sex with a 19-year-old man. And also because he's an inveterate liar. He built a whole career on a lie, that he was a happy family man. He was not. He was a liar.
Sam Dowler, your Union Jackass nominee.
Rishi Sunak. He's out of touch, he's out of ideas, and he's out of time.
Well, he's not quite out of time yet, mate, but, you know. Belinda de Lucy, your
mine is another honorary one. It has to be Jacinda Ardern this
week.
Jacinda!
Yes.
The well-known Republican has now accepted a damehood.
She deserves it.
Yeah, she does. She does.
Are you joking me? What's she done apart from divide the country, ruin the economy, completely taken this honour against all of her morals, given that she claims to be a Republican?
You loved
this woman is a joke, Sam Dowler, who will only further her own celebrity rather than the cause of her people. Yep. So why does she deserve it, Sam? Tell me now.
She deserves it because of maybe her past actions. I mean, you used to love her, Dan.
No, I didn't.
You did.
No, and milking our monarchy while trying to get rid of it, no, it's a bit hypocritical.
I don't agree with trying to get rid of the monarchy. I don't agree with that.
Well, yeah, she's a Republican. She's become a dame now. And all I'm going to say is go and look at her record. She has divided New Zealand between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. She has destroyed the economy. This is a joke. But, of course, the Liberal elite will love it. So, yeah, Jacinda Ardern. Yeah, she's my Union Jackass. That wound me up. to end the show. Sam Dowler, Belinda DeLucy, Carol Malone, thank you so much to my superstar panel. A programming note, very special show tomorrow night from 9 p.m. We are going to be recreating the evidence at this extraordinary and historic trial. So join us for Harry's Evidence, the verdict, with a lineup that includes Megyn Kelly, Paul Burrell, Angela Levin, Lady Colin Campbell, Tom Bauer and Phil Dampier. A very special edition of the show tomorrow night from 9 p.m. But next up is Headliners. Good night.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're